Certifying in elementary and early childhood education. What originally brought me to Oklahoma Christian is I play basketball here at OC, so I got a scholarship to play basketball. I actually came to a basketball camp here when I was in 7th grade, and so that's how I kind of heard about OC for the first time, and then my senior year I just kept that in mind. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be just like my kindergarten teacher. Those littles is where I can kind of make my mark on the world. I specifically enjoy the relationships that I get to get with my students. That's something really big that we focus on here in all of my classes, and all the professors will tell you that relationships are super big. So I always like to keep that in the back of my mind because all of my students are going to remember how I made them feel. OC's education stands out because of how much experience I get before I do student teach, and of course coming from the Christian aspect, because when I go out, if I teach in a public school, I can't verbally talk about my faith, for instance. I can't say that out loud, but the way I build those relationships and the way I act to those students they can take that away from me still. Anytime someone asks, where are you going to school? What are you majoring in? I tell them that I'm in the OC education department, and they're like, wow, like your degree is going to say that you graduated from Oklahoma Christian, and that says something really huge because we do have such a good education program here. I am excited that I get to be proud to say that I've graduated from this university in the education department.
My name is Anaya Minifield, and I'm a senior nursing major. I love how the OC nursing program operates. After we graduate, we have to take an NCLEX, the National Board Exam, to actually be able to be a nurse. And I feel like OC has done a really good job at preparing us to be able to take that test. We take our prerequisite classes our freshman and sophomore year, and during that time we start to learn and develop our skills. We learn how to start IVs, do Foley, stuff like that that we can actually use in the hospital before we are actually admitted into the nursing program. Whereas some other nursing schools, you learn as you're in clinicals, and I feel like it's much better. It gives you more opportunities to practice and to feel more comfortable when you first start clinicals at the hospital. It makes the nurses feel more comfortable with you and that you're competent. So since the Ellis Skills Lab has been built, the juniors and seniors have certain simulations that we have to complete to help us with our clinical hours that we're required to get for the Board of Nursing. And it's definitely helping us be able to think critically and to be able to establish our autonomy as nurses, because when we go to clinicals, we do get to observe and sometimes perform skills on our own, but we're not making any patient care decisions, and so it's a good way to start practicing that for when we actually graduate and are going to be making decisions about what happens to our patients. So after I graduate, I would love to go into pediatric nursing. So over the summer, I was at OU Children's Hospital, and I had the opportunity to follow some amazing nurses and learn so much. So freshman year, I was chosen for the President's Leadership class. I've also joined the cheerleading team this year. I am a member of Theta Theta Theta, and I've been secretary for the last 2 years. I'm involved in the Black Student Union. I'm an officer this year. I'm also senior nursing class secretary, and I'm also in the OC Honors Program. It's definitely difficult balancing my major and all of my responsibilities. I always just remind myself that I choose to be involved in all of these things, but I always try to make sure my schoolwork is a priority and do whatever I need to do. I think OC is so special because since it's a smaller campus, you are able to get so involved, and I feel really blessed to have the opportunity to be involved in so many things and to feel like I'm making an influence on my campus.
Security is the future.
Cybersecurity is becoming everyday part of our lives, whether it be physical security to actual security on the computer itself.
The first reason that why I chose the Christian University is because of the schedule and then the time.
It has been more challenging and more difficult to do the master's degree, but I've really been able to fit it into my schedule.
You don't need to quit your job. We have our courses are, for my cyber classes, they're one night a week.
The timing is perfect. You know, we get off work at 4 o'clock and classes typically start at 6 and they go till 9.
We are computer scientists, so our job is to help you become a scientist in how you approach cybersecurity, and in particular, we want you to be able to solve the security problems.
Once you're done with the cybersecurity course here, you can apply that immediately into your real-time industry experience. You can match up with that. That's the great benefit of our cybersecurity course.
Each of our courses have a certification that you are being prepared for as well, but you're able to now take the certification when you finish the course.
To be a user with escalated privileges on a government domain, you're going to require 8570 certification, which requires multiple certifications outside of your degree.
Each class has hands-on labs. So there are labs that you do and you learn how to apply the knowledge you get from the master's program. We want to make sure that you can apply business knowledge to the cybersecurity. As a mentor, my job would be to help you be successful. I'm going to help mentor you not only through your studies, but also your career path. You will be successful because we will be working together.
So any course that you're doing in class, face-to-face interaction with the professor, that makes a lot of difference.
When you graduate, we are also networking you with others, and that relationship is continuing to grow.
It's really important to know that we have a long-term impact on other people. So, and sometimes people don't think about that in jobs, but OC's really taught me that those things are important to keep in mind because my overall impact on the world is important.
Like our Christian University is the best fit with the cost effective. When compared to all other institutions, I would never believe that I'd be doing the master's. Can I do it? Is it possible? Yes, you can do it. But what I feel is, come to the school.
My name is Grace Umutesi, and I'm a public health practitioner. So I was part of the Rwanda Presidential Scholarship Program, and most of my classmates were doing engineering, and OFS is so great, and the engineering program is amazing. But I've always seen myself in the healthcare space. I remember meeting with my advisor and people at the international office, and they were like, you know, anything that's close to that would be pre-med. And afterwards, I was like, well, I think I kind of like this, so I stayed in. So I enjoyed being a part of the different serving opportunities that I got and serving team, whether if it was clinical or non-clinical, or just, you know, doing mission work with different groups at OC. That's the best memory that I have of OC, having the opportunity to connect with different people at different levels and in different spaces was priceless.
My name is Alex Hollenbeck. I'm an associate environment artist with Activism Blizzard, and I'm working with Sledgehammer Games. I was originally going to go to school for chemical engineering, and then I took chemistry and realized that wasn't for me. I jokingly said one day, why not games? My parents said find colleges, and there happened to be one in the backyard, so picked Oklahoma Christian. Games were something that let me connect with people. That was sort of an inspiration for the career to go into. I want to bring more experiences like that to other people. OC has prepared me for the professional world by giving me an environment to explore what it is I want to do with my life. When I came into OC, I did not have a specific focus that I wanted to pursue for game development. Now I'm an environment artist, which is a specialized role, and I only discovered that really in the past year, but it was because of the friends that I had made and the professors that helped sort of nurture me and push me into that area. I think there is a unique amount of commitment from the faculty in the gaming and animation program to constantly improve what it is that's being taught. They're just as willing to learn from the students as the students are to learn from them, and that is an incredibly powerful thing, and it really, I think it prepares people for the world. I enjoyed definitely the people you meet and the different reasons that they're all here. People tell stories and make art in different ways, and we all grow from that, and it ends up being an incredible experience by the time you're done. Do what it is that you love, and always stay dedicated to that, and you will turn out happy, and you'll get to do cool stuff every day and be excited about it.
Oklahoma Christian University is a campus of Christ followers, educators, and learners, seekers and creators making our mark for 70 years. A college founded in 1950, that's 70 years of uncommon stories, ambitious progress, complex dialogue, and extraordinary callings. Starting with only 97 students, we've grown to over 2,000 students sharing a 200-acre community in a thriving city. We're a place defined by the collective impact of our incredible individuals. OC is home to uncommon stories. We treat each student as an individual with their own unique context. OC is home to ambitious progress. We believe excellence in our educational fields demands forward thinking, nimble creativity, and a yearning to always learn more. OC is home to complex dialogue. Our community is a safe place for students to be themselves, to ask questions, to debate, and to grow as they learn about the world around them. OC is home to extraordinary callings. Students are more than their major. We help students find Christ's calling for them and equip them to be change makers in our world. Celebrating 70 years of students and alumni who are creating the future together at Oklahoma Christian University.
At a time when many people now think that all the rights everybody has, everything that they're entitled to, and they don't understand what's all this fuss about civil rights is concerned. But you thought enough to come, and we certainly are very, very appreciative to you for it. If Claudette Carvin had not done what she did on March the 2nd, 1955, Mrs. Rosa Parks may not have done what she did on December 1st, 1955. Claudette Carvin gave the moral courage to Dr. King, to Rosa Parks, to JoAnne Robinson, to Fred Gray, and others For what we did was based on the courage of this 15-year-old child. If her courage could inspire Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and Fred Gray to do something, think what it may be able to do if you do your best at any point in your life.
Some refer to me as an unsung hero, but I think of myself as a survivor of this struggle because so many lives were sacrificed either by oppression or murder.
Amy was not the first person that was killed on this nature. Rosa Parks was not the first lady that wouldn't get up. It's something like an idea whose time has come, and it went all over. You look at what good came out of it, then when you look at the price he paid, you can't afford to hate. Hate destroys the hater. When you hate, you're being controlled by people. Let nobody control you.
But I was married to a little country girl from Alabama who was a devout Christian. And I said to her, look, if the Klan comes here, I'm gonna talk to them, but I want you to sit in the window with the rifle. And then I can talk from a position of strength. She said, I can't do that. I said, but you're a good shot. She said, yeah, I can shoot birds and I can shoot skeets, but I can't point a gun at a human being. I said, that's the Ku Klux Klan. What are you talking about? She said, yeah, and you're a preacher. I said, what's that got to do with it? And she said, if you ever forget that under that sheet is the heart of a child of God, you don't need to be preaching. But she pushed me to think and work, and what I did changed my life, because without being able to do anything violent, I had to think.
Proper revenge means that, for me, is to be successful. For you to see me every day waking up, striving, doing something positive in my life, excelling in my life, right? And here comes the blessing. The blessing is that God puts us on the platform. He gives us our voice back, and we utilize that voice. So now that voice and that platform requires for us to be on TV, requires for us to travel around the country. So when those people who did this to us wake up in the morning and they cut their TV on,
who they see? They see Ray.
They see Ray. they see Ray, right?
I just made that up.
No, it's fine. And they go, oh, him again? Or them again? And so for the system, it took you 2.5 years to charge us, try us, convict us, and send us to prison. Now we're grown men and you have to deal with us for the rest of your life.
30 minutes before we went out on that victory stand. It's important. 30 minutes. We got together and we decided we want to make a statement. We want to make a statement that will be everlasting. At the same time, the statement we make will be the non-violent statement.
Did not go to become famous. I, Tommy Smith, did not go to become famous. I don't think you're different. You're very much different. I went because I won that position. I had to think, to tell the world, well, the United States is a human right, but it's also a civil thing, of how we felt about the country that didn't represent us equally.
Segregation was very limiting. There were just a few restaurants near campus that were black and one movie theater. I started looking for an organization that was trying to do something to combat segregation, because every time I obeyed a segregation rule, I felt like I was agreeing that I was too inferior to go through the door that the general public went through.
Finish what you start. You make a commitment to something. If you know that you're doing the right thing, then you stick with it and complete it. and I was fortunate enough to do that. Yes, I am the only female out of the Little Rock Nine that did participate in graduation exercise, and I'm proud of that. I'm most proud of receiving that diploma.
Too often people think of history as stuff that happened years ago, but today has no relevance. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everything that happens in time or space is simply and merely antecedent to everything else that ever happens. That's imperative to understand.
Good evening. Welcome to the 8th annual Oklahoma Christian History Speaks. This is one of my favorite lecture series that we do here at this university. It's become a very important tradition. Three things I really love. I love riveting history. I love inspiring heroes. And I love lessons that change lives. And that's what we get in History Speaks. Tonight is our 8th annual History Speaks. We are learning from living profiles in courage. I think you're going to love tonight's program. Gary Jones is the mastermind behind our History Speaks. He's done such a great job. A program really conceived by his wife Jill, but he has executed from day one in a brilliant way. I'm glad you're here tonight, Gary.
Welcome to History Speaks 2021, all the way from Selma, Alabama, here at the foot of the historic Edmund Pettus Bridge. You're in for a treat tonight. Tonight we'll have the opportunity to visit with someone who walked this bridge on Bloody Sunday, protesting for our right, the right to vote.
In 2018, attorney Stacey Abrams was quoted saying, "Our ability to participate in government, to elect our leaders, and to improve our lives is contingent upon our ability to access the ballot. We know in our hearts of hearts that voting is a sacred right, the fount from which all other rights flow.
It's that same access, that ability to participate, that right to vote, that brought an 11-year-old JoAnne Bland together with all of Selma and hundreds of people from all over the country. The plan was to march to Montgomery from Selma with Dr. King to bring attention to blacks being denied the right to vote. The only way to get there? Crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
This is an unlawful assembly. You're to disperse. You're ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church. This march will not continue." Troopers here advance toward the group. See that they turn around and disperse.
Good evening and welcome to History Speaks 2021. It looks different this year. We're not together in Ball Auditorium with 1,300 people. We're not in a shared space, but we are able to truly speak with and touch history this evening. I'm excited to be here in Selma at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, talking with history in a real and powerful way. Our guest for this year's History Speaks program is no other than Miss JoAnne Bland. I could tell you a lot of things about Miss Bland. I could tell you about some of the amazing things that she's done. I could tell you about her amazing place in history. But I think it's best if you get the opportunity to hear from Miss Bland yourself on tonight. And so without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wherever you're watching us from on tonight, welcome Miss JoAnne Bland.
Thank you.
So glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
So let's start by telling us where are you from originally? How did you end up in Selma?
Well, you're actually in my hometown.
Okay.
I was born and raised here in Selma, in George Washington Carver Homes, housing projects that's still here. This is George Washington Carver Homes. This area became the center of the movement.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It was built in 1953, the year some of us were born. And it gave us the opportunity for my daddy to be able to buy a house. And see, during that generation, they did what projects were meant to be. They were supposed to be a place where you could stop and live cheaply and save and move on. And my daddy did exactly that, because now I live in the house that he purchased.
And so if you're watching and you tonight and you aren't familiar with Selma, Selma is about 54, 55 miles outside of Montgomery.
It's actually now 50, but in the 65 it was 54. You're right about the 54.
Okay, so just outside of Montgomery, Alabama. So I know this is probably an oversimplistic question, but how do you end up on Edmund Pettus Bridge, or at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965 as a young girl?
Maybe I should start from the beginning. My grandmother, Sylvia Johnson, came to live with us when I was 3 years old. My mom had died in the halls of a hospital here, the White Hospital. They didn't have what my older sisters called any black blood. I don't know what black blood is today. But the blood had to be sent to Selma on the bus, and my dad was to pick it up and then take it to the hospital. But by the time the blood got here, it was too late. My mom was gone, and my baby brother in her tummy, too. My grandmother came to the funeral, and she stayed to help rear us along with my dad. Well, grandmother had lived in Detroit, and she shared some freedoms that we didn't have in the segregated South. I grew up during segregation. And she started talking to some of the women in the community because she couldn't understand how things hadn't changed in all these years. They introduced her to a lady named Amelia Boynton. Mrs. Boynton and her husband Sam formed an organization in the early 1930s called the Dallas County Voters League to set about registering African Americans in the community to vote. My grandmother started going to the meetings, and she would take us. Boring.
So about how old were you at that time when you were going to those meetings?
About 8.
Okay.
And maybe even earlier, but I can remember going when I was 8 years old in 3rd grade. But while they tried to think of strategies on how we were going to get what they call freedom. And I thought they were the dumbest old people in America, because I already knew that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves.
Right.
But it was obvious that these old people didn't. One day we were on this street, a few blocks down. There's a drugstore that's still there, Carter's drugstore. But at that time, Carter's had a lunch counter. And I wanted to sit at the lunch counter, but my grandmother said I couldn't. She said, colored children, that's what we were called then, can't sit at the counter. It didn't stop me from wanting to sit at that counter. Well, one day, my grandmother was talking to one of her friends in front of the store. And I was doing what I always do, peeping that window. Watching those white kids, wishing it was me. This particular day, my grandmother noticed, and she leaned over my shoulder and she pointed through the window to the counter and said, when we get our freedom, you could do that too. Wow. I became a freedom fighter that day because I understood it was a different freedom that they were fighting for.
Yeah, that's it's interesting how you mentioned as a child the perception that we were free because Abraham Lincoln had freed the slaves. And
exactly.
I think we can make the assertion even now that many people have the misconception that through the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, that everything should have been okay.
Yeah.
Or that even that the march to Montgomery is for the right to vote as opposed to exercise that right that we already had.
Right.
As well. So it sounds like you have this foundation that's built through family. So how does that continue and morph throughout your life?
Well, I started going to the meetings of SNCC and SCLC. SNCC was the most important because it was a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Right.
That's where the young people hung out at First Baptist Church. And they tried to teach me the principles of nonviolence, but I wasn't having any of that. I grew up in the hood. You hit me, I was gonna hit you back.
Right.
But I've come a long way since then. Violence in any form is wrong. But I like the marching. And when they come out to church and get in the line, I'd go to.
Yeah.
And we march up to the courthouse. That's right around this corner. And sometimes they see us coming and lock the doors. But we kneel on the steps of the courthouse and someone would say a prayer to the Creator, asking him to lift the hearts of those evil men.
Wow.
So our parents could vote for us until we could vote for ourselves.
Wow.
And that got old quickly because they started rolling yellow school buses up in front of the courthouse and taking us to jail. They would put us in cells that were supposed to hold 1 to 2 people, but I've never been in a cell that had 2 people in it. 20 to 40, all jammed up in that little space. If you were lucky or unlucky enough to get to bed, you didn't sit that long because the mattress was gone. It was just that frame.
Oh, wow.
The toilet was just right there, no privacy.
Yeah.
Our food, dry beans or peas, and if you've ever cooked beans or peas, you know that you can't just open that pack. You got to pick out the stuff you can't eat. Nobody did that for us. I think they took pride in bringing you a plate with a huge rock on it.
So you mentioned SNCC and the SCLC. Who do you recall some of the leaders of SNCC during that time?
Oh yes, John Lewis was our president at that time. Now I was not close to John at that time. I guess I was too young.
Yeah. And he's from Troy, right?
Troy, Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
How far is that from here?
Maybe 100 miles.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But I knew him.
Mm-hmm.
And who else was here? Jimmy Webb.
Oh wow.
Jesse came in and out with SCLC. Just so many. Hosea Williams, just to name a few, they were.
Right.
It was a hotbed of SNCC and SCLC. Well, John, since he was the chairman, when Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young man in Marion, Alabama, was killed by a state trooper, that's when the leaders decided to walk from Selma to Montgomery. So there was excitement in the air. And I understand Dr. King didn't want that march, but since SNCC was determined to have this march, Dr. King asked one of the SCLC preachers to help lead it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be just a SNCC march, SCLC would be represented. So I think Andrew Young and Hosea Williams flipped the coin.
Yeah.
And Andrew either lost or won, whichever way you want to look at that. So he stayed back.
Yeah.
And Hosea walked beside John. So we lined up on the playground of George Washington Carver Homes. It was the same one that's today. And led by John Lewis and Hosea came down this street and over the bridge and met a wall of policemen. And as I was walking, I knew it was awfully quiet for that many people to be walking down the street. I was about midway of a column of approximately 600 people walking 2 by 2. So when I
now this is Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is Bloody Sunday.
Yes.
How old are you at this time?
11.
11 years old.
Yes.
How are you on that bridge at 11 years old? How are you involved in this at 11 years old?
I only knew movement.
I love to say that again.
I only knew movement.
I only knew movement, yeah.
I thought every child in the United States did the same thing I did. Played, had fun, went to jail, marched.
Yeah.
I thought that was a normal life. I was much older before I realized it was not a normal life. So
that's so powerful to me because this is 65, right? And just maybe 2 years earlier, in Birmingham up the road, the 4 little girls were blown up in 16th Street Baptist Church.
Right.
Kind of as a retaliation of children being involved in the movement. And for you to, as an 11-year-old, still have that fight and that stick-to-itiveness, that's amazing.
No, it's not. You have to understand that I had never been to Birmingham, so it was just this remote place somewhere.
Yeah.
That some kids were killed.
Right.
Doing the same thing I was doing. But the leaders of the movement moved the movement right in the smack dab in the middle of the housing projects. So that church was safe. This is Brown Chapel AME Church. This church became the center of the movement. This was the SCLC's headquarters. Two of the marches that so much is written about, Turn Around Tuesday, left from right here. That march was led by Dr. King. The successful march from Selma to Montgomery left from right here. But they chose this church because it's completely surrounded by housing, even in the back, so that it was safe. This monument was dedicated to us by the Funeral Directors and Morticians Association. Did you hear me? Funeral Directors and Morticians Association. Over on that block beside Dr. King's bus, it used to say, "I had a dream." I lobbied for 20 years to change that. You know, they changed it, didn't even tell me. I walked around here and they had slapped that piece up there. Yeah, how you gonna say I had a dream in the middle of a housing project? Like this is it. Black people don't need words that put them down. They need words of hope. And Dr. King didn't say I had a dream. He said I have a dream. Now, look at the way they listed the names. Okay, James Reed, the Unitarian minister from Boston. Viola Gregg Liuzzo, Detroit housewife, mother of 5 who came down to help. She was killed transporting marchers back from the Selma to Montgomery march. And then they list Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young man in Marion, Alabama. A trooper was beating his grandfather and his mama ran over. And as she approached, the trooper drew back the billy club to hit her and he put up his arm to stop her and the trooper shot him. Put those names in alphabetical order.
Jackson, Louiso, Reed.
Okay. Put those names in chronological order.
Jackson, Reed, Louiso. Jackson should be first. In any order you put it in.
Anyway, what's the justification for putting that like that? Jimmy Lee Jackson was the reason the other two were here. Not to take away from they gave their lives. No, they didn't even give their lives. Their lives were taken. Taken. We should stop saying give. They died for us to have the rights we have so arrogantly. But why list them like that? What does that say to our children? The 2 white people were more important? And why did they put Viola next?
White woman.
Because America was less sexist than it was racist? And Jimmy Lee is last. Now I doubt if they'll ever change that. I grew up in that church. So it was safe. We felt safe. That I think it was very strategic that they did, because nobody could get to that church and do anything to it.
Yeah.
And without somebody seeing it, somebody black seeing them, okay?
Right.
And stopping them. So it was safe.
So you're involved, you're on the bridge, and you said that it seems like it was eerily quiet to have that many people.
Yeah, because usually people be yelling at us.
Yeah.
Or we be singing, right? Because singing was a big part of the movement. It motivated us. So, but nobody was singing. We were just walking slowly toward the bridge, right? And when I crested that bridge and could see across, I saw the policeman lined all the way across 4 lanes, right up under that first traffic light. I was too far back in the line to see what was happening. I didn't need to. I knew from previous marches that when John Lewis and Hosea Williams got to that line of policemen, one of them would ask permission to pass. It would be denied, and they would go down on their knees and we would follow suit. One of them would say a prayer, and after prayer, they would stand up, we stand up and go back to where we started from. We either plan a new strategy or just regroup and come right back.
Yeah.
I'm standing there waiting for the front to go down when suddenly I hear gunshots and screams. I think they're killing the people down front. Before we could turn to run, it was too late. The men on the service roads on each side came in. A group came in from the back and the front, and they were just beating people. There was just nowhere to go. They were just beating people, old, young, black, white, male, female. It didn't matter. They were just beating people. People are everywhere bleeding, not moving. And you couldn't stop to help them or you'll be beaten too.
What do you, if you can recall, what are you thinking?
I was terrified. I couldn't find my sister. I didn't know anybody. I couldn't see anybody. And the gunshots that I heard were not bullets. They were the tear gas being shot into the crowd. And then tear gas blinded us. You can't see, you can't breathe. You panic. It was just horrible. Oftentimes you run right to the people that you're running from.
You mentioned that you couldn't find your sister, so your sister was out there with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started off with her, but she's my older sister, so they always want you to act right. And I didn't want to act right. I wanted to be with my friends, so she'd take one step forward, I'd take a little one until she got tired of trying to keep me up there. So I wound up about midway with a group of my friends. But we all scattered. Nobody thought to try to group together to get through it. You just ran. You didn't.
Yeah.
You wanted to get back across the bridge so you could get home, but it was hard. This is First Baptist Church. I'm not stopping, okay? This was SNCC headquarters. This is where our marches would leave from. After the march, I came back here. And we went into the church thinking we would be safe. We were not. They came into the church and started beating people all over again. I saw a lady fall all the way down those steps and lay there as if she were dead and you couldn't stop to help her. What happened at that bridge did not stop at that bridge. It happened down here all night long.
So do you remember anything else about that day after the attack on the bridge?
I remember when they decided that they would walk again on that Tuesday. I think Dr. King came back that Sunday night. And that Tuesday, they organized us again. And we went back. I held my sister's hand as I walked across the bridge. But I'm not ashamed to tell you, when I crested that bridge and saw that same scene I had seen that Sunday, I tried to go back. I tried to go back, but they wouldn't let me. They held my hand and kept talking, trying to coax me across. And finally, one of them said, "Come on, they're not going to beat Dr. King." I went, but I was scared.
So it's interesting that you make mention of that second time with Dr. King being with everyone. Had the privilege of having a conversation very similar with Andrew Young a few years ago, and he made mention of Dr. King not being there on Bloody Sunday because it was a Sunday and had some other obligations and all those things. But how, I'm always blown away how history, these intricate pieces kind of fall into place. Let me tell you this, I'm quite sure I probably would have tried to turn around too, and in my mind I am as tough as they come. But I cannot imagine what you would have had to have going through your mind as an 11-year-old. So having experienced something that not very many people can truly live and tell that story about, how does that start to transition you into a life of being a freedom fighter?
I don't think it was a transition. I think I was born to do just what I'm doing. I think I believe that movements for social change are like jigsaw puzzles. Everybody has a piece. Everybody is a piece. And you determine how big your piece is in the puzzle for social change.
Right.
You know? So I think I found my piece by teaching this history. I think it's important that all generations know where we came from, because it's their responsibility to make the world a better place than they found it. And if they don't know where we've been as a nation, there's no way they can take us there. They'd be bogged down making the same mistakes over and over.
Absolutely. So how far in the march to Montgomery did you go with the group?
Just the first leg. My feet hurt. nothing profound about it. My
Yeah.
feet hurt.
Yeah.
When I was so glad to get to that campsite.
Yeah.
I just knew I wasn't going any further. That who walks 10 miles in shoes that, you know, we didn't have these nice comfy shoes that you have now. Those sneakers that they call Chuck Taylors.
Yeah.
They were about the only thing that we had, and you bought them out the grocery store with a string tied between each one. So, and now they cost a fortune. Which had known I'd kept the ones I had. But it's amazing that even I was in the Army, right? And I didn't realize how important this history was until one day I was in France. It was one of, I guess, on my bucket list, but we didn't know what a bucket list was then. I've always wanted to do that because I'm an avid reader, have always been. My grandmother insisted. And all the romance novels that I would read sometimes would be set in France, and they talk about sipping tea in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. So I wanted to do that, and I got my wish. I was sitting there with 3 other friends, and we were talking, and a lady like 2 tables over said, "Where are you guys from?" And they kept telling where they were from. When they got to me, I said my whole place. I said Selma, Alabama.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, the bridge." I said, "What does she know about the bridge, right?" Yeah. So we spent the afternoon, not just touring. We spent most of the afternoon sitting talking to her.
Wow.
That and my friends didn't know, you know. So I had this captive audience for about 2 hours until I said, "Look, we're gonna have to leave soon and go back to base. So we need to go at least take some pictures or something, right?" That was that. So I said, I never forgotten that because I thought, how could a person in France know about the Edmund Pettus Bridge? You know, so, and I met, and the people that were with me looked just like me, and they knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
So when we go back to base, they told everybody, somehow it got to my commander, and I had to go before the whole battalion and tell the story during February, you know. So it became everywhere I went, I had to do that, and then they would send me to schools and stuff. Yeah. So when I came home, I looked for a job, and I found one at this youth leadership organization, 21st Century. And out of 21st Century came the National Voting Rights Museum because we wanted a place where we could tell our stories.
Right.
That we realized that our educational system was lacking in that.
Right.
That our children didn't know anything. They grow up with white European history and don't even think about us. You know, they whitewash the bad parts and make everything like it was hunky-dory. So we didn't feel that was right, so we opened the museum without any money. It's closed now, but without any money, just for that purpose. Yeah. And I've been doing it ever since. When I left the museum, I decided that I just wanted to talk to young people. They get it, you know, and I didn't want to have to sugarcoat it.
Right.
Just tell it like it is. It was bad. It was real bad. It must never ever happen to another people. And the only way that it won't is that generations to come know that it did happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the stories must be told. I was just explaining this to someone a couple of days ago, that your reasoning is the very reasoning behind Carter G. Woodson starting Negro History Week in 1926 and it blooming out to Black History Month, because it's not being taught in our public school systems or even in some social circles as well. And so again, I appreciate you sharing this with me. Tell me a little bit about Edmund. Who was Edmund Pettus? Why is this bridge named after this fella?
Well, I don't think we had any say-so on who it was going to be named after. Period. His name is Edmund Pettus Bridge. Edmund Pettus was a Confederate general. He was a state senator from Alabama. and he was the Grand Wizard of the Dallas County chapter of the KKK.
Right.
Now, there's this movement going to rename the bridge. I'm against it. Let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we did on that bridge in 1965 changed the whole meaning of that name, Edmund Pettus, right?
Absolutely.
And every time you walk across it or take my picture on that bridge, he's rolling in his grave. I call it Beautifully Evil. This is Live Oak Cemetery. We're going around what is called Confederate Circle. Confederate Memorial. And this is the monument, Nathan Bedford Forrest. But most importantly, when I've learned over the years that when you rename, renew, new history begins. And old history is forgotten. And this history is too important to the fabric of this nation to be forgotten. We can't allow that.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have to stop and think sometime. Young people just, and I'm pretty sure that's what started that, and because that's easy to do. Or they so thought it won't be easy in Alabama, but it's easy. It's one of those things you can pull down that. You can pull down that statue, you know.
Right.
You can take the letters off this bridge. And,
it's easier than telling the story.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even telling the story as to why, you know, why his name is on the bridge to begin with.
What
or why
needs
the
to be
exists. Right.
What needs to be done is they need a plaque right there to tell who Edmund Pettus was,
Really was,
and then what happened on that bridge.
Yeah.
Because what happened on that bridge changed the whole course of this nation.
Absolutely.
So I'm against it.
No,
against
that makes total sense. I think that even, I mean, knowing that now, that even strengthens for me what you all did. I mean, to you know, not only just the march and the walk and everything that you were doing, but to march across this bridge that was dedicated to this person whose life's work was to make sure that you never got what you were walking to get. I think that's super powerful. One of the things that I've always found fascinating, I'll confess to you, I'm a little bit of a nerd, not a lot. Just a little bit now, don't do me like that. I'm a history guy. Literacy tests. I've always been fascinated in a really weird way with literacy tests because, in my opinion, there was really no rhyme or reason as to the information that they were asking for. So if you're watching this and you're not familiar with what a literacy test is, literacy tests were given to blacks. They had to know certain information to be able to even attempt to register to vote. And the information was so, I mean, it would be named, you know, Congress people that nobody would know, or just these random laws and facts. Did you have any relationship or know anybody in close proximity who was able to pass a literacy test or had experience with literacy tests?
You also had to pass a verbal test if you were African American before you even got to that.
Really?
And the questions with me, I'm sure you heard about the jelly bean jar.
Yeah.
How many jelly beans in this jar? How many gallons of water in this Alabama river?
Right.
Who was Lincoln's uncle's wife?
And so if you've seen the movie Selma, that's actually the scene with Oprah at the window. That's what Ava DuVernay's trying to depict, is the verbal test before she can get to the written test. Yeah.
Right. And you only got to the literacy test when somebody vouched for you. And then you passed it whether you didn't pass it or not, because there were questions like, what does it mean of moral turpitude? What the? Okay.
Yeah.
And I've learned since then a little bit about moral turpitude because they stopped felons from voting with that if they committed crimes of moral turpitude.
Right.
So.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. But let me tell you what Abbott Turner. Abbott Turner is right behind John Lewis and Hosea Williams, and he's carrying this sack on his back. If you look, Abbott was the leader in Marion, Alabama, where Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed, right? Particular day, he had graduated from Alabama A&M in Huntsville. He came home, and the first thing he wanted to do was register to vote. Well, he goes into the courthouse, and the registrar is a young man of his age that Albert's family used to sharecrop on the young man's land. And he knows that the young man dropped out of school in the 5th grade. And he gives him the test. And
so the guy with the 5th grade education
was given the college graduate.
Student.
So he takes the test and he takes it back to the registrar, and he does it like this: you flunked and dropped it in the trash. Albert said he became an activist that day because he was determined to register to vote. But the audacity, you know, that someone with a 5th grade education was put in a position because who your daddy is.
Right.
You know, that and that hadn't stopped today. You know, not many of our children can go to college and come home and say, I'm going into the family business. That we've been left out of that area. That's why I think when a child is born, especially if they're of color, you should teach them economics.
Absolutely. I say all the time that you can't have a conversation about race in this country without talking socioeconomics, just because of the relationship between the two, between class and race and stratification and all those things. And you're absolutely right. So let me ask you this question. We know about Edmund Pettus Bridge. We know about Bloody Sunday. We know about the march to Washington. Tell me what is it that we all need to know about Selma as it relates to the civil rights movement beyond Bloody Sunday?
Selma should be the Mecca. Everybody should come to Selma.
Now, do you believe that, or are you saying that because you're from Selma?
Child, please. I truly believe that. Because I think this is a place where so much change happened. It was one of the last battles of that era.
Yeah.
And we won.
Yeah.
And it's the one that still has lasting legislation.
Absolutely.
That is under attack every day now.
Right.
So if you don't know, you need to come to Selma. Many of us are still here. You don't have to hear that watered down version. You don't have to hear what somebody came here 2 days and your college uses it as a Bible to tell us about this, to teach students about this particular era. We're here. Hundreds of us are still here to tell those stories, to tell the real history, not the one that somebody made up, memorized and sanitized so that they think children will can understand it better when they know nothing about children in the beginning. So I just think Selma should be the place. And we do, up until the pandemic now, we did have, we had the Bridge Crossing Jubilee. We're still having it, but it's going to be virtual this year like everything else. But thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people descended on Selma, coming back so they can connect again, because sometimes we get busy with life and we don't think about these things.
Right.
People of color should think about these things every living moment.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
And what they can do to right what's wrong. Because we've come a long, long way, son. We've come a long way. We're just not where we need to be.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's important that you know this history.
Yes, ma'am.
Not just the history of Selma, but Montgomery, Birmingham. We're right, Atlanta. We're right. It's not that far apart.
Not at all.
That if you come and you do that trail, learn that history, learn where we've been, and walk through that history and connect.
Yeah.
That's the important thing, you connect.
That's one of the things I love about, that corridor you kind of mentioned with Montgomery and Selma, Tuskegee, Birmingham, Atlanta, the interconnectedness of the history too.
Right.
Even with you mentioning, growing up in the George Washington Carver homes, and we know Carver's, work in Tuskegee and all that good stuff as well. And That is so powerful to me. Where are we right now? Where are we right now? It's just in a, you know.
We're sitting in James Perkins Park. It used to be the Songs of Selma Park, but we renamed it. James Perkins was our first African-American mayor. We elected him in the year 2000. He's my bud, I'm serious. I worked hard to get him elected in 2000, and I worked twice as hard to get him elected in 2020.
Yeah.
Because he, that's the only time Selma, to me, had any progress. That in order to have progress in any town, you're gonna have to work across color lines.
Absolutely.
That you can't have one side pulling against the other side, because somebody's gonna lose, and it's usually people who look like me.
Right.
So, and in small towns, I don't care what you say, money runs these towns. So in order to have any collective change, you gotta change hearts. You can't change, you can't just fight. We know what's right. We just know, we're just learning how to get it.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes great sense. 1863, Emancipation Proclamation, 1865, I believe, 13th Amendment, right? And so it's literally 100 years later, and we're marching, you all are literally marching across this bridge to exercise a right that you had on paper a year later. And I want to talk about the importance of voting, because I don't think I think that's lost a lot of times when people have this conversation about Bloody Sunday, as if it was just, just the next march, just the next thing to do. It was to exercise that right to vote, and the importance of understanding that for 100 years, you let a people go with no resources, no money, no voice, no say-so, right?
You give me this freedom, and
yeah.
And we're like, what the?
Right, well, and Dr. King said it best, right? It was freedom to the winds and the rains of heaven, right?
Exactly.
It was freedom and famine at the same time. So why was voting so important in 1965?
With the right to vote, we could change some of those laws that were unfair to us. We could try to elect people who understood, people who looked like me. I wanted representation, and we were just not getting it. That has not changed today. That we know the problems. I don't have to go through the problems, but people always say it's not going to change. It's not going to change because you didn't participate. Not only did my vote elect the man that this park is named for, at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, I make sure he knows it, that my vote elected you.
Right.
And my vote elected you because you said you were going to do this, and you said you were going to do this.
Right.
What progress have you made on that? We vote, and then we just sit back and complain around the dinner table about they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything because you have not asked them to do anything.
Yeah.
You have not reminded them. When people put as much importance on their vote as I put on mine, I bet you we'll have some change.
Yeah, so the notion is that it's not just the vote, it's the follow-up, it's
Exactly.
the accountability
Exactly.
that comes with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have nothing to complain about if you have not said anything.
Yeah.
Even if you voted, you get up and vote. And besides, it's a slap in the face to us that were on that bridge.
Absolutely.
In 1965, when young people, and particularly, don't vote.
Absolutely.
And the government is corrupt. Change it.
Yeah.
Get involved. You can't change it on the outside. You got to be on the inside to change it.
Yeah, I'm always blown away when people say stuff like, well, my vote doesn't count. And I'm like, well, if your vote didn't count, people wouldn't try to stop you from voting.
That voting thing must be awfully important.
It must mean something, right?
Awfully important. You got to think, man, people don't think about that.
Yeah.
If they're trying to take it away, who wants something that's worthless?
Right, absolutely.
That's worthless. It must be awfully valuable, and you hold it in your hand. You are the vote. All you got to do is go. If you don't like the candidate, vote for the other one. If you don't like the other one, Write in who you think is best, but go.
Right.
But go. Don't sit it out. I was proud of the turnout for this past election.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it was really, really good. Now we got to make sure they do what they say.
Yeah, the accountability piece. And I've never I've never really looked at Bloody Sunday or the march from Selma to Montgomery in that manner as a means of accountability, of literally holding the government accountable to give us the access to what you said we had.
Right.
And that's extremely, extremely important.
Right. And then all the obstacles that had been put in place to stop us, starting from things like our inferior schools, segregation, and all those things to stop us from even questioning.
Right.
Why? Because if you're not educated, you didn't know that you could do that.
Oh, absolutely.
So this voting thing in '65 was still a new thing because here in Selma, out of a possible 15,000 eligible black voters, we only had 250 on the roll. And most of them had, if not all of them, had to be, because one of the things that African Americans had to have was someone to vouch for them, a white person to say, I'm a good Negro. Wow. This is a good Negro. Let him vote. And then he made sure that good Negro voted for who he said vote for.
Right. There's so much wrapped in that because if I need you to vouch for me, I have to vote your interests. And I can't be vocal on issues that might upset you. Exactly. And I can't be involved with the movement in a way that would cast a disparaging light on you. And so really any person of color, any black man or woman who wanted to actually vote in their own interest were easily excluded from the process. That's
because you had to give the ballot back to a white man.
Yeah.
Now, and don't forget the same people were in charge that were trying to stop us from getting the right to vote when we got the right to vote in 1965. It took us 36 years to get a new mayor. The same mayor that was on that bridge on Bloody Sunday was our mayor until the year 2000.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, and that's when we elected the man that this park is named, though.
That's a long time for the community to not force change, to not vote them out.
In a predominantly African American town. And nobody you asked, you could go around and poll people. Did you vote for Joseph? Nobody, and even white people said they didn't vote for him. The only time we had any collective change was when we became more involved, that we held some of those jobs. We followed the boxes from wherever they went, that we worked our own polls, and had watchers, and so
that accountability piece.
That's the only time.
So important, so important. So one of the things that I've learned reading about you and your story is that you spent a little bit of time behind bars.
A little bit.
Just a little bit of time behind bars. Tell me about that.
They would arrest us to keep us from marching. And they, as I say, put us in jail. Now, by the time I was 11, I had been in jail 13 times. But let me tell you about the first time I went to jail. I was with my grandma and about 30 other women and children. I count this as an arrest. One of those 13, right? Because we marched to the courthouse, and the colored entrance of the courthouse, isn't that something? The colored entrance of the courthouse was on the Alabama side of the street, Alabama Avenue, right? And this is the county courthouse on your right. That's the white entrance we are passing. This is the colored entrance, or was the colored entrance, I should say. And that's where I was arrested for the first time when I was 8 years old, right there on those steps. Oh, wow. We climbed up the steps, and as we were climbing the steps, we saw this woman run to the door and take this piece of paper, a sheet of paper on the door. And when I got close enough to see, it said, "Out to lunch." I remember telling Grandma, "Grandma, white people sure eat early. We just had breakfast." She said, "Hush." She told me to hush. So I was just wondering why they kept standing there. And you could hear the traffic behind us on Alabama Avenue. I heard the sound of a different engine, and I looked back, and much to my delight, they were those yellow school buses, right? And they drove up and stopped. And then I saw the policemen grabbing the women and the women grabbing their children and putting them on these buses, and I was so excited. I was excited because, you know, black children didn't ride school buses. No matter how far your school was, you had to walk. White children rode the school bus and would taunt us as we would be walking. I said, "Grandma, could I sit by the window?" She said, "Sure, baby." I got on the bus and I'm all excited. It rolled 2 blocks right in front of the city jail and stopped. I said, "Grandma, why are we here?" And she said, "They're gonna arrest us." I started crying because I was scared. And Grandma said, "Don't cry, baby, things are gonna change." They took us in the building and put all us in a cell, along with the women. My grandma, I remember playing on the floor with toddlers. So I count that as my first arrest, being in that cell with, it turned out that it was a holding cell, but we were still in jail. You couldn't leave.
Were there any other times that you were arrested that stuck out to you, or?
Oh yeah. Normally, they would arrest us the day, and sometimes they make us spend the night. Sometimes they let us out the same day. They take us to court, and he let us go, right? But this particular time, they didn't. They didn't take us to the city jail or our county jail. They took us out Highway 80 and took us to this prison camp that was called Camp Selma, right?
As kids?
As kids. We stayed there 8 days. 8 days in Camp Selma. And by that 3rd day, it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun, and people were getting sick, and we would be singing, and they send the prisoners in with belts and hoses to beat us with, and they would say, "Just scream," and like we're doing it, you know, and they just hit the wall or the bed or something like we're hitting. They wouldn't beat us now.
Yeah.
But 8 days, and then they let us out in the middle of the night.
So you got more compassion from the prisoners than you got from the police.
Oh, please, the prisoners look like me. The prisoners look like me. The guards at the prison didn't.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was just bad. I was glad to get out, but I was scared when they let us out and we had to walk back home. And this was about maybe 5 miles out that we had to walk home and do it safely.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, y'all were children.
Yeah. But even today, I don't think they realize the power. Sometimes the powers that be don't realize that we are human beings and should be treated as such. To do that to people, and what happened on that bridge, put children in jail, kill children, you have to dehumanize. You have to truly believe that they are not the same as you.
Goodness.
Because I always wondered how, what they taught in white churches, you know, and they were Christians. So when I go to church and the pastor talks about love your neighbor and all of this and how you're supposed to love everybody. And I thought white churches said you're supposed to love people who look just like you. And I didn't know any white people, nice white people, until the movement started. I thought all of them were the same. That
Yeah. What a statement. I always wondered what they taught in white churches. Goodness gracious.
Couldn't have been teaching about love.
Right.
Yeah. Did they have a separate heaven from us if we're segregated here? That I always wondered about that. But I understood later that that they taught the same thing.
Yeah.
That so you dehumanized me because it didn't matter.
It
didn't apply to me. It applied to everybody that looked like them. See the church on the right? See this church? This is Shiloh Baptist Church. Shiloh was a white church in the 60s. Right after the march in April of that year, Easter Sunday, my sister and some of her friends decided to integrate that that church. The good Christians inside told them to go worship with your own kind.
A childhood full of involvement and action and even arrests. What does freedom fighting look like for you as you begin to grow up?
First, as I'm addressing college students, let me say how proud I am of their activism in what's going on today.
Yeah.
The movement in '65 also was fought primarily by young people and women.
Yeah.
And women. And that's important because when you see the pictures, you see Dr. King brought what I call the 3 M's. He brought motivation. To this day, when I hear his voice, I want to get up and save the world.
Yeah, yeah.
He brought money. No revolutions can be fought without finance, right? And he brought the media. So the pictures you see followed him.
Right.
And the men that were around him.
Wow.
And that's why we call ourselves foot soldiers. That we had the generals, but the foot soldiers. Dr. King may have been here 5 times, and I'm being generals out of the whole time.
Yeah.
This movement was fought primarily by locals, and when Dr. King came, all the men came out, and so they could be up there with him and push the women and the children back. And for the longest, people thought that Dr. King was here every day telling you where to go and da-da-da-da. Today, we're fighting some of the same issues that we were fighting then. Voting. They keep putting obstacles in the way, oppressing the vote, and purging rolls when they know people are still here. And if they can't do that, the people in the cemetery start voting, right?
Right.
My sister found that my dad voted for Joe Smitherman 1 year, and my dad had been dead about 8 years, so I don't know how he did that. He should have tried to find us and talk to us so we could. But today, that same activism is needed. You can't rest until it's gone. I can't rest until it's gone. I have to do my part because I see it, you see it, they see it.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you're not the one to right these wrongs, it's just not gonna happen. That I tell my groups when the last thing they do when they leave Selma is cross this Edmund Pettus Bridge walking, and I insist on that. But before they go, I tell them to close their eyes and just imagine the world you want the people you love to live in. Just the ones you live in.
Yeah.
Not me, just yours. And I want you to think about that as you walk across this bridge. When you get across the bridge, I want you to start making sure that world happens. And remember what I told you about being a piece of the puzzle? Imagine what kind of world we would live in if we all worked toward that vision that they had while they were crossing. So I'm not worried about, too worried about the children of the day because many of them get it. Many of them know. Many of them are activists too. And that stuff about standing on my shoulders, get off my shoulders and do what you're supposed to do. You heavy, you're heavy. Tired of fighting for you. When you're able-bodied and can do it too.
Absolutely.
That's right. You're gonna have to organize. And another thing, you can't organize to get rid of the issue with the table looking like me and you just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta organize with the rainbow.
Absolutely.
The rainbow gotta be sitting at the table and coming up with ideas to do it. I tell you another thing, white people got privilege.
Yeah.
They have privilege, no matter how poor they are, just simply by the color of their skin.
Absolutely.
You have to use that privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time, I believe the systems never change until people who benefit from systems decide it's time to change.
Exactly.
Right, until they decide that
that's
change,
profound.
Changing the system is more beneficial than what I get out of the system.
Exactly.
Right? Slavery doesn't end because black people got tired of working.
Exactly.
Somebody,
no, it did.
And so that has to happen. I agree with you wholeheartedly that there has to be some diversity of not only pigmentation, but diversity of thought too. That's one of the things I've always admired about your generation and the involvement in the movement. It wasn't a monolithic thought. You had some people want to do this way. There was enough room in the world for Martin Luther King and Huey Newton to both coexist.
Oh yeah.
And
it was needed.
Definitely needed.
It was needed. And I remember as a little girl, during this particular time, Malcolm X had spoken at Tuskegee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Dr. King was in jail.
I'm sure Booker T was rolling over his grave.
Malcolm came rode over to Selma to talk to Mrs. King, and I think he was at First Baptist.
Okay.
And they made us all come into church because I thought Malcolm was going to come and kill all the white people. all of us. Because the white people were the problem, not us.
Yeah.
Just kill them all.
Yeah.
So Malcolm had come to Selma to save us.
That's what they thought was going to happen.
They made us go into church, so I knew then he was going to kill all the white people because they didn't want the children to see it.
Yeah.
So we went into church, and he got up in the pulpit and was talking just like Dr. King.
Yeah.
I was so mad. I was so disappointed. But then I felt like he just talked just like Dr. King, and all the children were excited. And when we left the church, we were looking for the dead white people in this in D.C. I've since changed.
Yeah. But you know what? In your experience, that is a powerful experience because we were actually talking about this on the drive over. That the experience on this bridge was near the descent of Dr. King's life. And the relationship between Martin and Malcolm that it formed and kind of where they were to have personally listened to Malcolm get up and speak on behalf of and that's powerful.
And it was a powerful visual too.
Yeah.
Because when him being here and the way the media had villainized him, that it said to the white people, okay, you can do it King's way, I'm coming.
Right, absolutely.
I'm coming.
Absolutely.
So they chose King's way.
Yeah, that's powerful. I never knew that Malcolm X came and did that here in Selma as well. One of the things that you mentioned about him going to Tuskegee, right? And you see this if you go to Jackson, where a place like Tougaloo, which is right around the corner from Jackson State, would host Medgar Evers, would host Martin Luther King. And the way the campus looks now as opposed to, a Jackson State or some other places, because of their reluctancy to be involved in the movement. I think places like Selma and Tuskegee have to be lifted up intentionally because of the sacrifices that were made on a socioeconomic level to allow the movement to happen in your spaces.
People don't realize the value of of the rights they wear so arrogantly. They, for every right that people of color have in the United States, we had to fight for. People had to die for you to have it. And you don't give anything back. They don't give anything back. They just go on like, don't even say thank you. Don't even say thank you. This should be a bustling town with tourists everywhere because it should be a Mecca that you should be coming to. But there's no importance put on it in education. There's no importance put on it in churches anymore.
Right.
When I was growing up, churches were the center of the activities.
Absolutely.
Because the pastor had a captive audience on Sunday, and he could talk about being active. And you know, activism and activists are new words. You know, we were just marchers. We protesters. That was even a new word. You're not gonna find that in they're gonna talk about the marchers, okay? And to me, marching means your feet are moving. Your feet are moving. We're not just sitting back strategizing on how we was gonna do it. You strategize and then your feet start moving. You use your brain and your head. So, and marching should be the last thing. Today I see it's the first thing.
Talk about that.
Yeah, today, and what worked for us might not work today. But to me, marching should be your last thing. You should be at the table first. You should be at the table and figuring out a strategy, because marching just should be just your last strategy. Okay, we're gonna hit the streets, and then you need to organize, because we can't shut cities down. We can't, you know, because somebody says, I'm gonna lose my job if I go march. But if we could organize and everybody win, from the factory worker on, it'll be some change quick, because the United States is run on economics. Money, if they're losing money, if you hit them in the pocket, that's why boycotts were so successful.
I mean, the Montgomery bus boycott is a great example of the economic.
Exactly.
But to your point, it only worked because the churches were involved, right? Because the churches provided the rides to work and whatnot, because they weren't riding the buses. And so that interconnectedness again of the church and the movement
it's called organizing.
Yep.
And I believe that. I truly believe that you can. And back to the point about people asking what we should do. Young people do it all the time. Every tour I have, someone raise their hand and say, what should we as young people be doing now? I don't have a roadmap. If I did, I'd be popping my collar, because we'd be where we need to go, you know? We would have already done it, right? So we failed to get to where we were supposed to be, I do know you just can't sit back and do nothing. Yeah, I don't know what you should be doing, but you should be doing something. When you see injustice committed against anyone, you should be on your feet.
I love that.
Either
do something.
You gotta do something. If it's nothing but scream, so that you can get the attention of others. You gotta do something. You have to do something.
Do something. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Right? Do something.
The Blood Sunday March left from back. And guess what? It's a piece of the original cement still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Pick up a rock, a pebble. Look down, baby. Just pick up any one of them. Let me see your rock. Oh, yeah. That's Lilton Lowry's rock. You know, she was the youngest person to walk all the way from Selma to Montgomery. Look at you holding that history in your hand. You must be a history maker, too. You better be. He goes out there and get John Lewis's rock. I just don't understand. All that, and he picks up John Lewis's rock. You know who John is, I don't even have to tell you. Look at you holding that history in your hand. You must be a history maker too. Look, where your rock? Go on, girl. How you pick up Amelia Bowen's rock? She and Mother Foster, Marie Foster, Amelia Boynton and Mother Foster were the first 2 women in line on Bloody Sunday. First 2. And they wasn't for spring chickens then. They were in their 50s. And they were right up front. Look at you holding that history in your hand. You must be a history maker too. You better be. Y'all holding history in your hand. Now listen, you can throw that rock down or you can keep it. If you take it back to wherever you live, you need to put it where you can see it every day. Every day. Because when you see injustice committed against anyone in the whole rainbow of humanity, and you feel like you can't do anything, pick up that rock and hold it in your hand and take from it the strength of the ordinary people who stood on that same rock and made history that not only changed this town, but America. Then get up off your behinds and do something. Is that clear?
Absolutely. What a time we've had here in Selma, visiting with Ms. Bland and getting to learn all the history surrounding the March to Montgomery and all the civil rights history here in Selma. I want to thank you again for supporting us, not only this year, but for 8 years straight. God willing, we'll be able to get together in person next year. But if not, I sure look forward to going back out somewhere, finding history, bringing it to you so you can hear history speak. Have a great night.